Yes. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our live broadcast tonight with the person everyone has been waiting to see, Naomi Whittle. Welcome, Naomi.
Oh, Kat, I'm so excited to be here with everyone. This has been such a fun journey.
I bet. So, what's really been fun is to follow the audience and our people who've really supported us in this project. And at the beginning, they started saying, "Oh, I know Montel. I recognize Montel." And as the series has gone on, so many people are saying, "Oh, I feel like I know Naomi. She's so great. I just have fallen in love with her and her stories and what she's done and what you've brought to this audience." They're very, very intrigued about you, and not everyone got to catch your personal story. So I'm going to give you like 3 or 4 minutes just to give us the abbreviated version of what brought you to this health journey.
Thank you so much, Kat. So for all of you that are joining us, I'm really humbled and delighted to have had the opportunity to go on this journey myself personally, where I got to learn from so many incredible experts, and so many of the experts are world-renowned, and they were able to really sort of cut through the jungle of misinformation that's out there to help all of us understand what the truth is really about the crises that we're experiencing in our country. And my personal journey is what brought me there, and my personal journey has everything to do with my own family. So I grew up in Europe, and my mother is French, and my father is English. And when I moved to this country, my mother started to gain a lot of weight and became very uncomfortable, and that weight actually has contributed to some serious challenges with her health. And as her daughter, my goal has always been to help support her health and her well-being from the inside out. And so while I couldn't care less about what she looks like, what I really care about is how long am I going to have my mother to be with my children, to live her life and live her ultimate life where she's not just in that survival, but she can thrive. And so that was what really drove me to do this documentary, bring all these researchers together. I wanted to help my mother and solve for her and give her solutions, while at the same time reaching out to everybody, not just in this country, but globally, because this has been a global opportunity to connect. And thank you so much. So many of you have been writing to me from all over the world, and I give you all a shout out because I'm so delighted to be part of this journey. But it is my mother's struggle that drove me to do this. And then of course my own personal autoimmune disorders that are, always in a sensitive place, where my own doctor, who now is Felice Gersh, who is part of the docu-series, where Felice Gersh says to me, Naomi, you need to be very aware that these don't move into disease states. So it was those two factors plus what we need as a world to really bring this information forward.
When you search, when you're really someone you love, your mother, that's such a bond, and the grandmother to your children, right? And when you're searching and you find answers for her, you start finding patterns, right? And you say, oh, these are common occurrences, these are patterns that everyone should know.
That's right, absolutely. And that's been the joy of it. I mean, there are experts like William Dunn, who spent 30 years of his life researching autophagy and the benefits of autophagy, and the fact that it won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2016, and it's a process that we all have inside of our own body. That's really, really fascinating. Or you look at, again, Dr. Gersh and her research around circadian rhythms, or Michael Bruce as America's sleep doctor and what he's discovered around how our circadian rhythms, which also won the Nobel Prize, but this time in 2017, just by tapping into these processes that we have within our own body and learning from experts who have dedicated their entire lives to this one area of study, being able to pull it all together in what I know is a very long piece of work, but super fascinating.
Well, it's long, but if you look at it in comparison, we are really disseminating like you said, the life's work of these people, in an hour or 2 hours isn't that much to invest on our part to get a summary of the life's work, decades of what these people have focused their entire lives on, and your whole career and your life on bringing these things to surface. So I know one of the most asked topics is fasting. Naomi, you and I actually had this conversation earlier about, fasting sort of been like this religious, Zen, kind of practice, I think, in most of America's heads. And the weight that it carries for health is really, really big. And so let's talk a little bit about how fasting affects autoimmune disease, and maybe specifically you.
So for me personally, I've been fasting for over 25 years, and I
Not
love
the whole time, right?
part of not the whole
Yeah,
time.
not 25 years straight.
News of people that have fasted for over 100 days, and I love that. So I've been fasting for 25 years, and you fast once a week, twice a week. How often do you? Twice a month?
2 to 4 times a month. Yeah.
Yes. So, and you're fasting for religious reasons, correct?
In the past, yes. I've started since meeting you, doing other fasting, but yeah.
So for me, for 25 years, I've done it as the main tool to help reduce inflammation inside of my body, and to help my body really eliminate the pollutants and the toxins that build up. And so I've done it with medical doctors. I've done juice fasts. I've done water fasts. I've done all sorts of fasts over the years. Anything that you can imagine, I've used when it comes to fasting, because for my body, it's the number one tool. About 5 or 6 years ago, I spent a lot of time with different researchers within different universities. That's where I spend most of my time, is working on different innovations. And so about 5 or 6 years ago is when a number of my friends who are PhDs, Dr. Heather Hausenblas, that all of you have seen, Dr. Steve Anton, Dr. Joseph Maroon as a medical doctor, these individuals started to really talk about fasting. And they started to speak about, well, what's the shortest period of time we can incorporate not eating into our life that will provide the most results. So it was probably about 5 years ago that I started to understand that 16 hours could produce tremendous beneficial results for our bodies. So that's when I started to do what's called intermittent fasting, and got lots of results. And it didn't mean that I wouldn't also do longer fasts. Like I just did less than a month ago, I did a 5-day water fast. Half of my office right now, on their own and with their doctor's recommendation, they're doing water fasts as well. And it's inspiring to see where ancient nutrition and knowledge is coming to the forefront of science. And it doesn't matter what university you go to, and you speak in the aging department, in the exercise divisions, individuals within universities are doing the research now. And it's a very exciting time for the world of fasting and health. In fact, intermittent fasting is the number 3 most searched term on Google around health. And that is the greatest thing, because think about it. We can all transform our health just by doing what our ancestors did. And that was, if you think about it, they were either fasting or they were feasting. And we have this opportunity, and it doesn't cost us a thing.
That's really, really important, because so many of our viewers have, anywhere from, chronic nagging pain that they just want to get rid of, all the way to very serious illnesses. And then you've got the population that wants to lose weight. It's only the majority of the people in the United States surveyed say they want to lose weight. So it's pretty much all of us. And you bring up a really good point, because billions of dollars are spent trying to get rid of these health issues or the weight, right? And for you to say it costs us nothing, it actually saves us money and we feel great. What a great relief to so many people.
And what got me really inspired is, as I mentioned, I've been doing it for 25 years. It's my lifestyle. It's all that I know, and it's what really helps to reduce the inflammation in my body. But what got me super excited is when, Walter Longo or Joseph Anton, they have a fasting mimicking diet, right? And that's for those who want to use a product. But what I loved is when I learned after 3 days of fasting, it's when our stem cells are actually regenerating. And to think of the power that we have in our own bodies, we have all of that. It all exists within us. Is very cool as well. And if I were to just say a little bit about intermittent fasting, because it's a great place to start. And you were asking me earlier, what if someone's hypoglycemic, if they've got different disease states? You can always check with your doctor. That's an important thing to do. But make sure, if you are checking with your doctor, that your doctor has a base of knowledge and expertise around this most healing modality that exists within you. That would be the only caveat, because a lot of times if a doctor doesn't have those expertise, it will get poo-pooed. And there's a huge miss in a healing process that anyone that's watching and listening right now could be experiencing. So if you're thinking about starting intermittent fasting, which is what I call essentially scheduled eating, so you don't eat anywhere from 16 hours. The first step you want to take is you want to remove the sugar out of your diet. And however long that takes you to do, just remove the sugar. And once you get to the place when you've removed the sugar, then you take the second step, which is upping your fat intake. If you can become fat adapted and your body can become accustomed and happy to use fat as its fuel, so it moves away from having glucose and moves into having fat as fuel, once it does that, then you are fat adapted. You have that metabolic flexibility that Mark Sisson spoke so much about, and you've got all of that in place. Then your body just loves to fast. So you can start immediately going into, if you stop eating at 8 p.m. and then you go and you don't eat again until 10 a.m. And maybe the first thing that you have at 10 a.m. is fat first. So it could be avocado-based breakfast. It could be, bacon. It could be a variety of nitrate-free bacon, of course. It could be a variety of fatty foods, or you could just add, grass-fed butter to your. I did a podcast today with Dave Asprey. You could do the bulletproof coffee. You could do the autophagy that I love so much that activates the autophagy with coconut oil or MCT oil. But if you can get fat first and carbs at the end of your day, that also helps you. So before you know it, you can go from 8 p.m. till noon because you've got a little bit of fat in there, maybe around 10 a.m., and you're satiated. And then it's very easy to go from 8 p.m. into lunch, and lunch being a meal that has fat at the beginning of it. These are the ways that we can help our body to embrace fasting and get the benefits.
Perfect. Well, we have a question around clarification. When you say get rid of the sugar, are you talking about, don't eat candy? Or when you say get rid of sugar, what does that encompass?
Okay, so for me, as someone who's been a massive sugar addict for many, many years, it means all of the above and a little bit more. It depends on the individual, right? So like I said, sugar has been my preferred addiction, my only real addiction I've ever had. I don't have an addictive personality, but I am super addicted. I was super addicted to sugar. So I never thought I could totally eliminate it out of my diet. So I guess the first step would be the processed candies and those kind of, sugar, like having sugar if you put it in your coffee, just removing all of the added sugar. The next step is really reducing the carbohydrates. And if you can take your carbohydrates to a very, very low level, if you're going to do keto, it's 5%, something like that. And you make sure that those carbohydrates are at the end of the day, and you're getting your carbohydrates from things like vegetables, but you're making sure that you're upping your fat, because I could not get off of sugar unless I increased my good fat all the way up. Otherwise, I was just so angry and uncomfortable. But when you get your satiating good fat up, your body responds, your brain responds, your whole essence is changed, because your insulin, you're not having the insulin spikes, your blood sugar is not going all over the map, and it can really make a very quick difference in your intake of sugar. So it's all of the above. It's carbohydrates. In fact, it can even be protein. So if you are consuming too much protein, we know that that protein can turn into a carb, which is obviously sugar.
So that's really hope inspiring for some of us, that increasing those good fats will actually help us break that sugar addiction. That's so helpful for so many of us. So talk a little bit, we've talked a little bit about fasting and autoimmune. Many viewers were very curious about Montel, with his MS, and what fasting is doing with MS, and has he implemented that, and has he seen results, and what is sort of the general consensus with fasting in MS?
So with Montel and his MS, he is absolutely incorporating fasting into his life, and that's why he joined me in this project. I mean, he and I have been friends for many years, and his MS is always the front and center piece, because the burning that he experiences in his body and the challenges that so many people don't see, but the way he walks and the fatigue that hits him. What's fascinating to me is, as he has incorporated the good fats, the fasting into his life, we take this journey together. You can see that he is transforming. I mean, he looks better today than he looked 5 years ago. And knowing him so well personally, I can see his energy, I can see his well-being, I can see his mental focus, and it's incredible to see that transformation.
That's so great. It's so many people are concerned and want to know. It's really interesting because they want to know for themselves, but they're also very concerned about Montel. And I was reading an article that someone wrote about him, that he literally would tape a segment, go to his dressing room and cry in pain, pull himself together, and walk back out. I think for someone so mentally tough, to show any weakness has been really interesting. But the fact that he can feel better is so great.
Yeah, and you're so right, Kat, because for somebody like him that is so committed to improving other people's health, his health, I've seen him run himself so ragged to try to share content and good information. And so, knowing his heart and knowing that he had his show for 17 years and the amount of energy that he put into it, and now his entire focus is around brain health, overall health for the entire body, but his ability to, he's his own guinea pig. He will try anything. And so for him to be able to get the good fats into his body and bring fasting into his life, it's like a miracle.
That's so great. Heartening to hear. Okay, now let's talk about, there's some really great questions on diet. Before we jump into that, we got right into fasting because it's at the forefront of every question we get. But before we move forward on the other questions, tell us a little bit about how you met Jeff Hayes. And people want to know, how did this project come together? How did you guys go, you know what, I think we're going to do this? Because so many of our viewers know of Jeff and have seen his other documentaries. And, they're saying, Jeff, thank you for bringing us Naomi. But I think, we all want a little sneak peek behind the scenes there, Naomi, about what's really going on.
So it's a very remarkable story, and I'm so happy to share it. I'm a CEO of a nutritional supplement company, Twin Lab, And that's what I do in my time. But this desire that I had, so my mother actually got sick, and it's due to her weight issues. And when she got sick, it was a huge wake up for me. And I just thought, if I can't help my mother, then I don't know what's going on. So I was thinking about, how do I find the most beneficial information for her to help her solve her weight issue and ultimately her health issue, because it's not about the weight, it's about the underlying health issues that are impacting her and so many of us, right? Like 60% of our country. And
you make a good point. The weight is the symptom.
Correct.
You don't look at it that way, but that's really, you make a very good point.
So I was really thinking about, how can I pull this information together? And I'm very lucky. My job and my career is dedicated to going all over the world and sourcing the most transformative solutions, health and well-being solutions, foods, nutrition. That's what I do. And I travel globally. I'm constantly all over the place. I was in Dutch Harbor, Alaska, looking at where the highest quality, purest fish oil comes from. I was in Calabria, Italy, and that's where I learned about autophagy, sourcing the citrus bergamot fruit for cholesterol and how it can impact our health. So I go all over the place. I was in Okinawa, which is where the largest group of centenarians live, these islands off of Japan, learning about the benefits of EGCGs that are found in green tea and how pork is such a big part of their diet. So I have huge opportunities and privileges to work with researchers everywhere. And I was thinking, how do I put this together into one format? I would love to do a documentary. And I was in New York City. I was at the Roosevelt Hotel, which is a hotel I never typically stay at. And I was there because I was speaking at the UN on women's empowerment, and it was close by. And I was meeting a friend that both Jeff and I have, Pedram, who is the CEO. He's the urban monk and CEO of well.org. And I was sitting at breakfast with Pedram, and I was telling him, I really would love to be able to do a documentary. And no joke, in walks Jeff Hayes, right past us, and Pedram lives in California, and Jeff lives in Salt Lake in Utah, and I live in Florida. And I'm sitting with Pedram. Jeff walks in, and Jeff says, "Hey, Pedram, I can't believe we're meeting each other in New York City." And they hugged, and Pedram had just literally heard me say, I would like to do a documentary. And that's how Jeff and I met. And we made a pact within about a week, because when I get an idea in my head and I see divine intervention, which is what I think this was, I don't let go. I'm like a dog on a bone. And so that's how it all began.
It was meant to be. And it's blessed your lives, Jeff's life, and so many, many tens of thousands of people. And that is so great. Thank you for sharing that. Like I said, everybody likes that little peek behind what really happened. So now we're going to talk about a big question, and that is, we have a pastime in this country called drinking. And, getting a beer after work or having a glass of wine to wind down, we have a lot of people saying, how does beer in particular and alcohol affect your metabolic rate, right? How does it affect your metabolism? And then to go take it one step further is sort of a multi-part question. Can you drink while you're fasting? And people are saying, well, if I'm fasting, do I have to go that whole time without any alcohol? So tell us how that works.
So it broke up a little bit at the end. Could you just repeat the last part?
So people want to know, how does alcohol affect the metabolism, right, and fat? 2, can you drink while fasting and or on a ketogenic diet?
Okay, those are some great questions, but I'll start with the first one.
Okay.
I'll start with, if you are fasting, you are not drinking alcohol. Okay, those two things do not go together. So no alcohol when you are fasting. End of story there. When you're on a ketogenic diet, that's a really great question. And we've had a number of researchers indicate that you can have like 1 glass of wine. It depends on the individual, but there is research that shows you can have 1 drink, 1 glass of wine while you're in a ketogenic state, and you can stay in keto with it. So yes, as far as our metabolic health and what alcohol does to our metabolic health, that's a much broader question. And if you have metabolic syndrome, the negative effects that can come with alcohol, that's important to know.
Okay. So the next question is, there are some people who are watching who have very high cholesterol. I'll just give you one really quick example. I went to my doctor 4 or 5 years ago, and I just read Dave Asprey's book and started increasing, butter from grass-fed cows and avocados and olive oil and avocado oil, and really took out all the junk oils in my life. And my doctor said, your cholesterol readings are better than anyone's I've ever seen. I would love to have your HDL level. That's the good one, right? So he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm eating bacon and avocados and butter. And he just looked at me like dumbstruck, right? So the medical community is kind of trying to catch up, but we have so many of our followers, Naomi, asking, I have high cholesterol, or I have high cholesterol and I'm taking a statin. Can I really add fat to my diet? They're paranoid. So help them through that.
Wonderful question. Thank you for asking. This is probably the number 1 question that people ask. And what I would like to say on this one is, we have a huge group of brilliant scientists that are part of this docuseries. And this is a question that Dr. Kate Shanahan and I spent a lot of time on this particular question. So what I'd like to do is I would like to tomorrow morning spend a couple minutes with Kate and post her answer, because she'll probably spend about 10 minutes on that answer. And I love what she has to share, because what she's going to really tell us is that what constitutes the right profile of cholesterol. Those numbers keep going down, and with the idea that statins become part of so many people's lives, otherwise you can't have the right cholesterol profile. So we'll have her answer that question, but just so that you know, for me, both my LDL and my HDL are higher than what are recommended, and I'm perfectly comfortable with that for specific reasons. So we'll let Kate really answer that question for all of you. But it's a great question.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we went from high cholesterol is bad to high LDL is bad, but high HDL is good. And we're kind of learning as we go. And you're right, Kate is an absolute go-to for this. And so for those of you who are watching, a couple of things really quick. Kate is broken up into 2. Her interview was so good and so long. She has so much to say, into 2 different episodes. If you haven't taken the opportunity to own the series yet, we really encourage you to do it. And for those of you who are choosing to own the gold package, we will be including the recording of this live Q&A in that package. So for those of you who've already gotten it, don't worry, it'll automatically be included as a bonus. So thank you, Naomi, and I think we'll look really forward to posting that. I'll make sure that we get that passed on to our followers. So you talked about having fat first thing in the morning. You mentioned, an avocado based, or like bulletproof or MCT oil, coconut oil, and the B word, bacon. We've actually had people asking about that, like, is feeding your kids, people are feeding their kids bacon and eggs again, which I say hallelujah, but some people are sort of freaked out by it. And is giving your kids bacon every morning like really, really okay? What do you have to say about that? And like you said, watch the nitrates. But
so I have 4 children, and I have little twin boys that are just about 3 years old right now. And in my house, the children can eat bacon whenever they want it. So they may eat it, once a week. They may eat it twice a week. That's how we do it in our house. But my children also eat bone marrow. Again, everything that they eat comes from grass-fed and organic, because we know that the pollutants and the chemicals are within the fat. And it's the fatty parts of the meat that we really go after in our family. So we never eat anything that's skinless or boneless. We prepare everything in that way, and they eat bone broth and drink bone broth pretty consistently as well. So, we all got the chance, well, I hope that everyone got the chance to see Toni Bark's interview. Dr. Toni Bark, she's a phenomenal, brilliant, superhuman with about 13% body fat, and she does keto as a vegan. So I'm not here to tell anyone to start eating meat or not. I'm just here to share with you as many experts as possible. And Toni Bark is a beautiful example of someone who looks, to me, half her age, other than her gorgeous gray hair, which she goes for. But when you get up close and personal with her, you see her skin and you see her energy and you see what her body looks like, and you know that she's been in a deep state of ketosis for it's probably 4 years plus now, and she does that on a vegan diet. Then I say, look, it's about eating in the way that is best for you. And Dr. Kate Shanahan says, eat like your mother, eat like your grandmother, your great-grandmother on your mother's side. So however she ate, wherever she came from in the world is great. And then there are lots of people that are going to eat plant-based, and you can do that too, and that can really work beautifully.
So that's actually got asked a lot as well, is if you're doing keto, is there such a thing as too much meat? And you addressed that. You said, yes, too much protein can, turn to fat, basically our body fat, right?
Yeah, I think sometimes what can happen, especially when we're getting into keto, is there can be confusion, right? Like you can think that, a ketogenic diet is cheese and meat. And yes, those can be easy go-to choices, but if you can embrace all of the good fats, like I'm going to grab them and show them to you guys. Will you grab the Pili nuts? I should just show you really what's in my bag right now. And what I travel around with.
Which is great, because for those of you watching, Naomi's traveling. She's doing this from on a break at a hotel room. So thank you. But this is this is for sure what you travel with.
So these are Pili nuts, Pili, and they have their shells on them, which is really, really unique. Each one of these is about 1.5 grams of fat, and they taste like butter. They're so delicious. So they're the fattiest nut out there. And on top of it, they have more magnesium than any other nut in the world, right? Wow. So I love those. Then I also eat, of course, because I want tons of variety. I want my macadamia nuts, which each of these have, 1 gram to 2 grams of fat in those. This is very funny. Like I literally bring these things around with me. So I was in England about 2 months ago visiting my father. And while I was there, I got this incredible olive oil that comes from Greece, and it's cold pressed. So you're getting all the antioxidants and the nutrients. I eat on average 2 to 3 avocados, and I've got some in my bag, and I travel with them. They may be hard when I start traveling, and then they just ripen over time. And I've also got, I want to show you guys one more really fun thing. Do you know what the fat bombs are? And then I've got the fat bombs, which are below me.
Yes.
Here, we'll show you them. We're going to get them out. So fat bombs you can make really easily, and they're a great way to get into keto. They're starting to melt now, but I'll show you one of them. They're a great way to get into keto, especially as you're trying to move away from the sugar. So this little fat bomb here, you can kind of see it.
Oh, it looks like a delicious chocolate.
It's a raspberry cheese, and there's no sugar. It's sweetened with a little bit of stevia or monk fruit. It's got coconut. It has cocoa fat, cocoa butter, and a little bit of dark chocolate. But it's a great way for people to start to embrace a high-fat diet. And you don't want to eat just one a day. You want to eat two. And so we make these at our house. And I brought these for my friends that I was hanging out with today.
Oh my gosh, thank you. That's such a great, thank you for sharing that. So that leads us to some other questions we have about oils. So you talk about eating avocados. You've shown us some good oil nuts, right? And then this fat bomb. So what are some of the best sources of omega-3 fats? And and how much is too much?
Okay, so that's going to depend on each individual. Like for me, I can't get enough of my omega-3s, and I know that through, the work that I do with my doctor, and so I can't get enough omega-3s in my diet. But I personally believe in fish oils, and so I love to get them from like a wild Alaskan salmon. I told you I was just in Dutch Harbor recently. It was a fascinating trip because what I learned while I was over there was that not all are created equal. And most fish oils, they're caught in, the fish is caught in great big nets, and then it's thrown to the bottom of the boat on ice. And what happens is where we get our omega-3s from, as a supplement, that's that part of the fish ferments and becomes rancid, and then by the time it usually comes from Central or South America, and by the time that it gets to Europe, which is where it's often produced, they have to pull absolutely everything out of the oil, so it becomes just like a blank slate. You pull all the vitamin A, all the vitamin D, all the cofactors, all of the SPMs, which are beneficial to reducing our inflammation. That's the benefit of taking an omega-3, and you don't get any of that good stuff when you've had to process everything out because it's gone rancid on the boat. So while I was in Dutch Harbor, I had the opportunity to go out on boats because I always want to know where things come from. And they actually take this Alaskan cod they fish, and it's line caught, taken off by hand, and then they flash freeze it right there on the boat. And you're getting all the nutrient density in it. And the reason they do this, Kat, and for everyone that's listening, which I'd never ever heard about, was because they sell the fish to the Japanese. And for those of you that are Japanese that are watching right now, you know the quality of fish that you're looking for. And so when it's flash frozen right there on the boat, the fishermen get paid 3 times as much for that fish when they sell to the Japanese. And so all of the other parts of the fish that are important in the fish oil and the omega-3s are frozen. And so I was able to be part of that clean process. And as we process the frozen cod and the cod livers and the parts of the fish that really make up the high doses of the omega-3, I was literally able to drink it fresh out of the equipment that they were making it on. And it's got all the rich vitamin A and D, all of those cofactors. So omega-3 can be found in lots of foods, and I highly recommend it. Lots of the nuts that I just showed you, but also if you're going to get an omega-3 supplement, trace back how it's processed, because all the goodness can be there.
Yeah, so it sounds like you can get fish oil, and it is fish oil, but it's none of the reasons you want to take it. Those aren't still in it, right? So
right.
You want to source a naturally sourced, fresh process. So what
or flash frozen or cold pressed. Those are the two sort of terms I think that are very important around omega-3s.
Okay, what did it taste like? This really fresh oil.
It didn't taste fishy. It
That's
did not.
It
was so weird to me. It tasted just like it was so rich that I wanted to just put it on my skin. And all of you have heard, I don't know if you had the opportunity to watch Dr. Udo Erasmus, personal hero of mine for 30 years. And he wrote a book called Fats That Heal and Fats That Kill. And the reason I love him so much is he really brought this idea of what is a good fat into the marketplace and what the right ratios need to be. And he created something called Udo's oil, which I travel with most of the time as well, because I love it. It comes, from flax, it comes from different seeds, sunflower oil seeds, it comes from coconut. There's just a beautiful combination of different oils that he uses. And when you meet this man, and the first time I met him, we shook hands, and I thought I was holding a baby's hand, right? And for someone who has an autoimmune disorder like me and so many of you, when the outside of our body is soft, that means, according to Dr. Udo Erasmus, that we are moisturizing and nourishing our body from the inside, because this is our, outermost organ, our largest organ, which means all the rest of the organs have got the right levels of the good fat. So he has like baby soft skin. Wow. And he's absolutely beautiful, and you would never know his age, and it's all from the right ratios of the right fats.
It's been interesting, especially women who spend so much time and money trying to look youthful and young and get rid of the wrinkles, right? I look at, the dollars spent on certain creams and lotions and laser treatments. And if we would shift even a portion of that spending to what we're taking in, I think it kind of resolves the problem on its own, right?
Yes. And again, I'll use myself as a reference here. When you have eczema that covers your body, you absolutely cannot put a lot of products on your body. I have to let my skin breathe. Yeah. And so beauty for me has to come from where the inside meets the outside. So I have to always think of beauty as an inside approach, because I don't have the luxury of putting different things on my skin. And quite frankly, at this age now, I know I don't want to put those bad things on my skin. There's so much pollution and chemicals in those products. And I think it's a cool thing to be able to understand, this is just a reflection of what's going on physically inside.
Good. Great. Thank you. So there's a lot of questions about fasting and intermittent fasting, and people trying to put together, they're learning about intermittent fasting, they're learning about short fasting, they're learning about 5-day water fast, they're learning about people going 100 days. And they're a little bit confused about what's best for them. When should they start? Do you have to, is intermittent fasting enough? Should you also be doing these 5-day fasts? Kind of walks a new person, someone new to this whole fasting idea that just got, fire hosed with all these different fasting ideas, kind of where to start and where to take your body through this process.
Great question. And we're going to be doing a fast, the 5-day water fast. But for those of you that want to try an intermittent fast, a 1-day fast, a 72-hour fast, a 5-day water fast, if you go to, you can go to The Real Skinny on Fat and email us, and we will incorporate you into a closed Facebook community. So I just need you to email us at The Real Skinny on Fat. And that's
support. So for those of you watching, support at therealskinnyonfat.com.
Perfect. And we're going to be starting a fast on Monday, this coming Monday. And again, it's going to be a great experience, and we're going to do it anywhere from, your first intermittent fast all the way up to the 5-day water fast. And it's going to be a community where we can support one another, and we can have each other there, and we can answer the questions there. So that's going to start on Monday. And tell me again where everyone needs to email.
Support at therealskinnyonfat.com.
Great. So support at the Real Skinny on Fat, and I'm going to be there every day of those 5 days, because it's just been an overwhelming response and request of these questions that you've said. But again, I guess the first answer I would give is you start with an intermittent fast, but you first need to start with getting the sugar out. Then you need to help your body become fat adapted, and then you can move into all of the other areas of fasting and get so many benefits. But when I just recently did the water fast about a month ago, it was the easiest thing. I didn't get headaches. I didn't feel sick. I wasn't lethargic. I wasn't fatigued. And that's because my body was fat adapted. So if you're already ketogenic, it's very easy to go into a longer fast. And if you're just exploring this world, then that's great too. And you should start with an intermittent fast.
So if somebody who's not ketogenic, not fat adapted, just wakes up and says, I'm going to do a 5-day water fast, is that okay?
It is. It just is a little bit harder. So I have a couple of people specifically in that bucket in my office that were so passionate when they watched this docu-series by all of the amazing and brilliant experts around fasting. I mean, we did, I think, 2.5 episodes on fasting, and we could have done so much more. Everybody is talking about the benefits to our health from it. And I have people in my office who are not fat adapted, who consume lots of sugar, and they jumped right into a 5-day fast, and they're on day 3.5 right now because they're passionate about it. So look, with support, but they're doing it together.
Yes.
That's the other thing I would say. They're doing it together. The reason I had Dan Pompa really go through the 5-day water fast and that aspect of fasting, and the reason I spent so much time with so many researchers on it is simply because Dan Pompa has trained hundreds and thousands of medical experts who impact hundreds of thousands of people's lives through fasting. So he's like the teacher of the teacher. And so I thought he would be a great person to teach so many of us. And then, of course, we've got, the world-renowned PhDs and leading experts from, Dr. Walter Longo, medical experts, Dr. Fung, many great experts who can really be part of this journey with us.
So for those of you who have got the series, who decided to own it, make sure you share it with people around you, particularly these fasting episodes, so you can get a community to support you. And for those of you who haven't, that might be the reason that kind of finally makes you say, okay, I'll own it, because I know if I showed it, if I said to my mom, let's do this, she'd be like, eh. But if I showed her all of these great researchers and PhDs and let her, participate and experience this with me, she would do it with me. And we talked about, I've my whole adult life have fasted, 1 to 4 days a month, 24-hour periods. And so when I tell people I did a 5-day water fast, the number one response I get is, I could never do that. But I want, for those of you watching, the 5-day was easier for me than a 1 day. The 1 day for me was the hardest day, and then it got easier after that. So don't ever say you could never do that, because it really was very, very invigorating. So let's talk about your book for just a minute, because we got a super interesting question that I loved from a very brave man who said he got your book and he was reading it. And he said, Naomi, I noticed you've written this for women. What I love about his question, what I love about him, is he didn't say, so I can't use it. He said, so Naomi, please tell me how I adapt it for me as a man.
Thank you for that question. It's an important question. And the reason I included my book, which doesn't tie in directly to the docu-series, the book is really about the activation of autophagy, which we do talk about in the docu-series, but we go into a much broader discussion. The book was written. It took us over 3 years to write the book, and I wrote the book because I wanted everybody to have the opportunity to understand that autophagy, which in Greek means self, auto, phagy, to eat, that we all have the ability within our cell, almost like a little Pac-Man, to eat up the junk and the debris. It's an automatic process that goes on in our body, and we can activate it through exercise. We can activate it through sleeping based on our circadian rhythms. And I have a little quiz in there that teaches you how to know what type of chronotype you are, what kind of sleeper you are, when you should be waking up, when you should be sleeping, so that you can get your circadian rhythms to work for you. It talks about the foods to eat and when to eat those foods. So it's not about depriving yourself, but really incorporating the right foods, but at the right time. So fat first, carbs last. I have another one where it's intermittent fasting and protein cycling. So this program, which is called Glow 15, I developed it for myself. And then because as a female, as a woman who has a large family, I'm a busy executive. I'm running, probably the only public company as a female in the nutritional supplement industry, Twin Lab, which is a 50-year-old company. And with all of the pressures of my work, I needed to find a solution for myself. And that's what this became. And once I started to notice the transformation in my energy and my focus and my well-being, just by activating this little process of cellular self-cleansing and detoxification, I was so passionate that I did a lifestyle study at Jacksonville University, and I chose to study women. So we studied a group of 35 women, and the lead researchers actually contacted me after 15 days, and they said every single woman in the study has achieved benefits through this program. And so it was an 8-week study, but we called it Glow 15. So a long answer to the question, I wanted to give women these easy and simple solutions to help to get out of that place of survival and really allow us to thrive. And everything that's inside of this book applies to men as well. But because for us as women, fasting can be a little bit different than it can be for men. So with our hormones in the program on the book, it's about every other day of intermittent fasting. And so it's geared a little bit toward women, but it's perfect. I mean, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was granted in 2016 to the Japanese biologist who discovered how this mechanism within our bodies is so powerful for really, neurodegenerative diseases, for cancer. And there's such an opening up for our health. And that's why Sanjay Gupta wrote my foreword, because he feels so passionate about this concept of autophagy. So it's not just for women, but I really wanted to highlight women. And I know that the men in our lives will support and go on that journey with us, but I want to make sure that women are getting the opportunity to thrive.
So you brought up this, where I want to end this, which is the Nobel Prize. One last point before we move on. In reading some of the emails and a lot of the Facebook comments, I'm surprised the confusion around the term water fasting, that people think that means you're not drinking water. So I want to clarify, when we say water fast, that's not fasting from water. So when you're water fasting, really what we mean, guys, is you're not eating food and you're fasting from food, but you're consuming water. Naomi, what is a good amount of water and what kind of water? And then for some people who need the minerals or salt, we've talked about Himalayan salt, how much, what do we really look at there?
So with water fasting, it's going to depend on the individual. Like for me, when I'm water fasting, I'm drinking about 3 liters of water at a minimum per day. I will sometimes add a teaspoon of Himalayan salt into one of my liters of water. I like to use a lot of different types of water. So in my house, we use mountain spring water. There's different mineral waters that can be incorporated. And, you know, a lot of people, when they're doing a water fast, that's how it's approached. There are other people when they're doing a water fast where they'll use, you know, different types of minerals. Some people even drink some bone broth. So there's a lot of different ways to approach fasting. And again, you know, we've got that added piece from Dr. Dan Pompa that's really around how to teach the experts, how to teach everyone else how to do a 5-day water fast.
So you talked about doing different ways. What about 0-calorie soda? That was asked quite a bit, and other non-calorie drinks.
No. Great question, but no. 0 calories. If there's one thing I hope that everybody has heard, and that is, this is a lifestyle that we can embrace that is not about calories. I just showed you some of the foods that I eat. I eat, you know, anywhere from 100 to 125 to 130 grams of fat every single day.
Wow.
I'm obsessed with the good fat because of what it does for my personal health. I don't count calories. I got on the scale this morning and I laughed because I am so satiated. I'm so happy with the foods I eat. I've completely broken my relationship to sugar, and I'm never going to worry about weight. That's the least of my concerns. Instead, I'm thinking about how much energy I have, how much more mental focus I have, how much healthier I am today than I was 3 years ago.
That's such a great answer. It couldn't have been put any better. So let's go back.
Forget about the calorie counting. It's not, when you're satiated, your body naturally is going to consume what's right. You're not going to confuse hunger and need for something. You know, if we could have 100 pounds of excess weight on our body. I'm sorry, is it echoing?
You sound, actually, I can tell it's echoing on your end. You sound fine over here.
Okay, I hope it isn't echoing for everyone else. We can have 100 pounds of extra weight on our body, and an hour and a half after a sugar-filled, carbohydrate-filled meal, we are going to be anxious to put more food into our mouth. So the big lesson that I got from the 100+ hours interview time I did, and you can imagine I spent every single weekend over about 100 days working and learning, sitting with the brilliant people that I had the opportunity to research. But if there was one thing that I really got, that if you're a burner, it doesn't matter that hour and a half later, doesn't matter how much you ate, you're going to be craving more, and you can have all the fat on your body can't tap into using it. And if you can move away from being a sugar burner to being a fat burner, that changes your metabolic health. That changes so many areas of your well-being. But just like Dr. Kate Shanahan taught us, moving into being a body fat burner, where you're actually using the fat cells inside of your body to burn for fuel, it's the cleanest fuel, it's the most energized fuel, and it's what will keep us the youngest and the happiest for the longest period of time.
Thank you. So to wrap things up, let's talk about this Nobel Prize, because we have this research on autophagy that was awarded the Nobel Prize in medicine, and it has transformative health effects. And overwhelmingly what I'm hearing is, how come nobody knows about this? So first of all, Naomi, thank you for having the passion and the vision and the tenacity to get this out there, because no one else really is. And secondly, why do you feel like the Nobel Prize in medicine is not mainstream news?
Well, I'm really passionate about it because I chanced upon it when I was in Calabria, Italy, with the citrus bergamot fruit. There was a researcher, Dr. Elizabeth Janda, over there. And as I spent the day with her in the laboratory, she was giving me this citrus whole citrus bergamot tea, and I was drinking it, and I drank about 4 cups with her. And at the end of the day, I said, Dr. Janda, it was delicious. I'm an English girl. I love tea. I drink it all the time. I travel all over the world, and in the Asian world, like in Okinawa, they drink so much wonderful green tea. What's the story? Why are we drinking all this tea? And she said, it's my secret weapon because it activates a little process in my body called autophagy. And that was the first time I had heard that word. And she explained to me how it can transform our health just by working with our own autophagy. And so as soon as I got back to the US from Italy, I started to look all over the globe for the top autophagy researchers. So I looked for the researchers that used exercise to activate it. I looked for the researchers that activated it in the skin, because I was like, oh, what could I do for my skin? And all of those, I brought them together, and I asked them and worked with them and did research with them. And that's what got me really passionate. And I couldn't understand why, if I was speaking with someone who was not a researcher in a very specific area of a university, didn't matter who they were, if they were a top medical doctor, they had not heard of this word. And I couldn't get that pulled together. But that was about 3 years ago, And so when the Nobel Prize in Medicine was won in 2016, I knew that the world would start to be opened up to it. But let's not forget, inflammation was discovered, and the effects of inflammation on our body in the universities 20 years before it hit mainstream. So my goal with this how-to guide is to bring together all the researchers and show us simple ways to activate it in our own bodies. And that's why I included it in the series.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for really being out in front and making sure that we have access to this leading information and don't have to wait and suffer. Honestly, some of us, you can say being overweight is not suffering, but it is. Like we talked about, it's a symptom. You suffer with pain, you suffer with inflammation and chronic illness and serious illness like cancer and just not feeling good. And for you to have such a passion and a drive and the ability to pull this information together for us and then give us an hour of your time while you're traveling and your busy day to answer these individual questions. And thank you in advance for the post with Dr. Kate Shanahan tomorrow. On behalf of everybody watching and listening, again, we can't thank you enough. And for those of you who are watching with us, continue to send in your questions, your responses, what's happened to you. Some of the funnest emails we've gotten are from people who said, I started my fast, right? And we want to hear from you. And we will continue to make this series available at the big discount that Naomi is offering while the series is live, because I have spent a little bit of time one-on-one with Naomi, and she just wants it to be possible to get in everyone's hands that we can. Maybe the people watching Naomi should get a copy for their doctor.
That's really exciting. I didn't expect, I didn't have an expectation around this content, but it has been the most exciting adventure of my life to be able to connect in this way where all the dots come together with these incredible researchers. So it's been an honor and a privilege, and I'm so delighted for all of us to be able to reclaim, even if it's a little bit of our health, but to have the opportunity to give ourselves this kind of information it makes me very happy.
Well, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. Everyone's jealous because I get to talk to you and ask the questions, but I'll see you soon, I'm sure. Travel safely. And all of you who joined us, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time, attention, and energy and sending your great questions. Good night, everybody. Good night, Naomi.
Good night.